Hi everyone, we're at Passenger Terminal Expo here in Paris, and I'm here with Lars Mosdorf, who is Chief Financial Officer and Labour Director of Düsseldorf Airport. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
First question for you, Lars, is how are things actually going for the recovery of your airport at the moment?
We're very glad to see passengers coming back. So traffic is definitely coming back. In the daily peaks, we even overreach the 100% we saw in 2019, but in general, we're coming back to somewhere around 70%. And we expect the summer to be very good, very strong, and we're glad that after 2 years of crisis, we definitely see passengers back at our airport.
Great, and I mean, if things are going so well, do you have enough staff for your operation as it is?
We would say yes, we have enough staff. We actually had indeed to reduce staff on the airport side, but the staff that we are now adding is not the staff that we had to reduce. So what we're at the moment looking intensively, for example, for competences from IT, but also for firefighters, so very specific functions. We are more worried actually about the number of staff that our service providers and companies around the airport have, especially in the operational field, security check-in and baggage handling. Those are the areas where people are not coming back, and that is for us a severe issue because the processes are enlarged time-wise, and we have really obstacles getting a smooth handback or a smooth start of the airport, because passengers, when they're coming back and the handlers are not there, or there is a big delay, the whole system suffers from it, and that's the big issue for us in Düsseldorf.
And when you're recruiting for the type of jobs that you just spoke about, how many applications do you get compared to pre-pandemic? Because a lot of people are saying, you know, the Great Resignation, aviation is not really seen as attractive anymore. So do you have any kind of statistics on that?
It's very hard to say because it's linked to the competence. For example, if I take the firefighters in the Düsseldorf region, there are a lot of huge industries. So for firefighters, it's very hard to really attract them. In general, I don't see what you just mentioned, that we as an airport are not attractive anymore. Of course, especially the young generation is looking for more than just earning money. I think they seek for a broader offering from the employer's side, talking about mobile work, talking about other issues that we can offer. And there I'm quite convinced and quite positively thinking that people still think that the airport is attractive, and we definitely are. And by the way, if I may add that as well, even if we had to reduce staff during the crisis, we always looked that we could offer to the young generation, for example, study programs and also internships and so on. And this was a key element that probably helps us now to attract again the young generation to our airport.
Thank you. And what are the challenges that you have for the year ahead?
The challenges is now, the first challenge is of course the ramp up. So really the operative day-to-day processes. The second challenge is then, I would say, to invent new business models. So we try through new technique, through digitalization, to come closer to the passenger, and we would like to offer a broader set of services. I think that's a big challenge as well. And then of course one of the big challenges that we currently face is that after the crisis we need to renew our master plan that has already also implemented elements for reduction of emissions. So we need to prove, as an industry, that's a big new topic, I would say, to implement measures that prove that the CO2 emissions really are reduced. And if I may add our example from Düsseldorf, we achieved already to reduce between the year 2010 and now the emissions by 80%, which is a big step, I think. But of course, the last 20% is still a lot of effort. Talking about new buildings, improved buildings, and technique that help us to better steer the buildings, so we can further reduce and to achieve our goal to become zero emissions by 2045, but also to become CO2 neutral by 2035.
Huge ambitions there.
Huge ambitions, that's right.
What are your lessons learned from the pandemic?
Lessons learned is that, first of all, be aware that something can happen that you never expected before. Each of us as airports and as the aviation industry probably had in their risk management in a scenario for pandemic and so on. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we looked at crises of the past, and we tried to motivate ourselves because we learned that each of the former crises was only a sharp dip, but a very short dip. So after 3 to 6 months, we were even overreaching the passenger numbers of the past. And Corona, I think, was an example that this is not given for granted, and that we need to be aware of the insecurity in which we live. So we need to be quicker. For example, the budgeting procedure was in previous times a half a year process. Now we're talking about scenarios being updated, sometimes even weekly basis. And that's just a very small example that quite a lot of business procedures are changing, driven by the pandemic.
And what changes have you made to your business to become more agile and resilient and poised for the future?
First of all, we have reduced our costs structurally. I think that was very important. Also, talking, for example, to the financing banks, that they regained trust, and that makes us, of course, a little bit more agile in a sense of that we can focus our investments that we still do, and we have refocused our strategy. So our focus today for Düsseldorf Airport is built on 3 pillars. The one is digitalization, the second is mobility, because we think that an airport is not only there for the aviation part, but we think that we are an intermodal part of other mobility services. I think that's a huge issue for the future. And the third one is, as I mentioned, is CO2 emission reduction or renewable energy, using renewable energy and using new technologies to really reduce.
And what have you done to bolster your non-aviation revenues?
There we come in with new technologies, to be honest, because so far an airport doesn't really know who is the passenger. The airline knows who the passengers are, so they can make accept and explicit offers to them. The airport has a lot of data. In all kind of areas we have data, but so far we didn't put it together, so we couldn't really learn from it. And that's what we're now doing. We build up a team of big data and artificial intelligence, and we're slowly introducing different services, for example, starting with parking, where we give to the passenger new offers, so we can more flexibly, more or less, set parking offers, and therewith we have, of course, the customer, our direct customer, then the passenger, and we can lead him through the whole airport process.
And do you share this data? Like, are you getting this data from the airlines?
We are talking to airlines, and airlines are talking to us, which is very helpful. And we're not only talking to airlines, we also talk to all kind of partners in the industry, because each of the partners talking about duty free, talking about also about technicians. We share the information, we put platforms together, and of course it's based on trust and on really sharing, because a one-sided coin would not work, and the process is ongoing, and I'm very optimistic that for the benefit of all participating partners, this will be a big step.
And are you seeing any trends coming through in the passengers that are walking through your doors now than they were prior to the pandemic? Has anything changed?
I would say yes, and I would say the big new thing is probably seamless. So seamless, eco-friendly mobility. That's something that we all will work on, and if you look at the different procedure steps that you still have at the airport, each of those steps probably will be reduced in a way that it's more comfortable for the passenger. The traveling shall be more relaxing, should be more on time, less waiting times, being more predictive in a sense of that I exactly know when to be where, and of course we feed all this with several new offers for the passenger that kind of makes the travel even easier than it was before.
And what are your 3 most exciting developments happening at your airport this year?
That's a good question. I think, first of all, we're very happy that passengers are coming back. So the first big thing is that we really try to handle the ramp up with a lot of passengers. I think that's a big issue. And then, of course, what I just mentioned is that we slowly introduce the new services. So I think there is not the big 3. I think it's a puzzle of different things that we put together. Even in small things like, for example, if I think about automation, where we work together with different partners and where you already can see the first examples happening, for example, cleaning the airport in a better way with machines that are somehow autonomous. And if you look at the apron, how the traffic is organized there and all those things. So exciting times are ahead.
And it sounds like you're pretty optimistic. So what is your business outlook for the future?
My business outlook is, I would say, positive, but we need to be aware that the capacity on the airline side has changed. I'm not so worried about business travelers, if they come back or if they not come back. I think it clearly shows that a big portion is coming back. Probably Teams and all the new techniques that we all learned it all helps us, and we probably will reduce short flights and so on, which is fine also for us as an industry, also to achieve the goals to reduce the emissions. But in general, now that it's again possible to travel, you can see that demand is coming back. And I truly believe, and this was also something that we saw during the crisis, as an aviation industry, we are part of, or we're I would say more or less influencing also the wealth of our society. For example, by giving the access and by giving the mobility throughout even times when all the other mobility services were locked or blocked, and therefore I think to travel is, from an economical perspective, it's very important for the economy. Also to handle the goods, for example, from A to B. 30% of the value, good value, is transported by air. So that already shows the influence of us as an airport or an aviation industry. But furthermore, I think traveling is something that has to do with exchange of cultures. And if you look at the severe impact of the Ukraine crisis, for example, I truly believe that travel and tourism also supports probably and hopefully a better understanding of each other within the world. And therefore I think it's an integral element that will lead to the fact that travel industry is coming back.
Lars, that was my last question, so thank you very much.
Thank you.